She was just a waitress, struggling to get by. But when two hungry kids showed up at her diner one rainy night, she gave them the only thing she could, a warm meal. 18 years later, a helicopter landed in her backyard. What happened next will leave you speechless. It was a cold and rainy Tuesday evening in a quiet neighborhood of Atlanta. The streets were nearly empty, puddles forming on the sidewalks, and the sound of rain tapping on windows filled the air. Inside a small roadside diner called Rosie's Place, the atmosphere was warm but slow. A few tired customers sat in booths, sipping coffee and picking at their late dinners. The neon open sign flickered dimly in the window. Behind the counter was Maria Thompson, a hard-working black waitress in her early 40s. Her uniform was slightly faded, and her shoes showed signs of long hours on her feet, but her face held a quiet strength. Life had been tough on Maria. She was a single mother raising a teenage son, juggling 2 jobs, constantly behind on bills. But despite the struggles, she always greeted people with a genuine smile and treated everyone with kindness, no matter how bad her day had been. That night, as she was wiping down a table near the front window, something caught her eye. Outside, standing near the glass with their hands tucked into their sleeves, were 2 small children, a boy around 10 and a younger girl who looked maybe 6 or 7. They were soaked from head to toe, their clothes clinging to their bodies, their shoes muddy and torn. The boy was trying to shield his sister from the rain with his arms. Both of them looked hungry, cold, and completely lost. Maria's heart sank. She stepped outside without thinking, letting the door swing behind her, and approached the kids carefully. "Hey there," she said gently, kneeling down to their level. "Are you two okay?" The boy looked away nervously, unsure if they were about to be yelled at or chased off. But then he looked back into Maria's warm eyes and answered in a soft, shaky voice, "We haven't eaten all day, ma'am. We were just hoping for some water." That was all Maria needed to hear. Without another word, she reached out her hand and said, "Come on in. Let's get you warm." She led them to a corner booth inside the diner, away from curious stares. She fetched 2 dry towels from the back and wrapped them around the children's shoulders. Then she marched into the kitchen and whipped up 2 hearty plates of pancakes, scrambled eggs, and toast, her treat, no questions asked. The kids ate like they hadn't seen food in days, barely speaking as they devoured every bite. Maria sat nearby, occasionally checking on them but never prying. She didn't ask where they came from or where they were going. She just wanted them to feel safe, even if only for a short while. As they finished, the little girl looked up at Maria with wide eyes and whispered, "We'll never forget you." Maria knelt beside her and gently brushed the girl's wet hair away from her face. She smiled and said, "Just be kind when you grow up. That's all I ask." Moments later, the children quietly slipped out into the night. Maria watched them disappear into the darkness. She didn't know their names. She never expected to see them again. But they never forgot her. Years went by. The seasons changed, the city changed, but Maria Thompson's life stayed mostly the same. She kept working at Rosie's Place, the same little diner where she had spent so many long nights serving coffee and pancakes to truckers, regulars, and the occasional traveler passing through Atlanta. The booth near the window where the 2 children once sat was still there, though worn now, its red leather peeling at the corners. Maria never left that job. Not because she didn't have dreams, she had plenty, but because dreams cost money, and life demanded survival. Rent was always due. Her son was growing fast, and teenage boys eat like they have bottomless stomachs. The bills stacked up like clockwork, and sometimes, the only way to stay afloat was to take on extra shifts, even when her feet ached and her back screamed for rest. She never became wealthy. She never made headlines. There were no promotions, no vacations, and certainly no fairy tales. But Maria found joy in the small things. The smell of fresh coffee in the morning. The sound of jazz playing softly on the old diner radio. The laughter of kids from the elementary school across the street as they ran home with backpacks bouncing behind them. She would often slip them a cookie or 2 if they came in with their parents. She especially loved watching people. Families, couples, strangers, each with their own stories she'd never know. She'd offer them warm food, a kind smile, and maybe a few gentle words if she sensed they needed it. And sometimes, they did. That rainy evening so many years ago, the one with the two soaked, shivering kids, began to fade in her memory like an old photograph left in the sun. It wasn't that she didn't care. She had simply lived through so many other nights, so many other shifts, so many other quiet acts of kindness that the memory tucked itself away, like an old book gathering dust on a shelf. Still, every now and then, when the wind howled against the diner windows or she saw a child walk by in a hoodie 2 sizes too big, the memory would flicker back. The little girl's soft voice saying, "We'll never forget you." And Maria would pause, just for a moment, wondering. Where had they gone? Did they ever find safety? Were they okay? But then the bell above the diner door would ring, a new customer would walk in, and reality would pull her back to the present. Plates to carry. Orders to take. Smiles to give. She'd brush the thought aside, not out of coldness, but simply because life didn't stop. Most days, she was just too tired to think about the past. Survival left little room for reflection. But fate? Fate wasn't done with Maria Thompson. Not yet. It was a peaceful Saturday morning in Maria Thompson's quiet neighborhood, the kind of morning that begged for rest. The sun peeked gently through thin clouds, and a soft breeze rustled the trees lining the street. Birds chirped in harmony, and somewhere nearby, a lawnmower buzzed faintly in the distance. Maria had just brewed herself a strong cup of coffee, the way she liked it, black, no sugar. She stepped out onto her small front porch, wearing her faded robe and slippers, taking in the serenity of the weekend. After years of tireless work, she had recently cut back her hours at the diner, finally allowing herself the luxury of slow mornings. She raised the mug to her lips. Then, she heard it. A low, rumbling sound. Distant, but rapidly approaching. It wasn't a car. It wasn't thunder. It was deeper, heavier, and it was moving fast. Her eyebrows knit together. She stepped off the porch and onto the grass, her eyes scanning the clear blue sky. A helicopter. Not just any helicopter, this one was sleek, black, and far too close. The sound grew louder, vibrating in her chest as it hovered above her neighborhood. It began to circle, the roar of its blades turning heads. Curious children ran out into the street, pointing excitedly. Neighbors leaned out of their doors and windows, shielding their eyes from the morning sun. Maria stood frozen on her lawn, heart pounding, coffee forgotten in her hand. And then, to her astonishment, the helicopter began to descend. It slowly lowered itself into the empty field directly behind her modest backyard, the field that had remained untouched for years. Dust and dry grass flew in all directions as the powerful blades churned the air. Maria stepped back instinctively, shielding her face from the wind. Her mind raced. Was it a mistake? An emergency landing? The door opened. Out stepped 2 individuals, dressed like they had come from an entirely different world. The first was a tall young man, strong and confident, wearing a crisp military uniform with badges gleaming on his chest. The second was a striking woman in a tailored blue suit, polished and graceful, her hair tied back, heels clicking softly against the metal ramp as she stepped down. They didn't look around. They didn't hesitate. They walked directly toward Maria. She took a step back, confused and breathless. The young man stopped just in front of her and spoke with a warm, steady voice. "Ms. Maria Thompson?" Maria nodded slowly, her eyes wide. "Yes." He smiled gently. "I'm Marcus," he said, placing a hand on his chest. "And this is my sister, Lena." He paused. 18 years ago, you found 2 hungry kids outside a diner on a rainy night. You fed us. You gave us warmth. You saved us." Maria's hand flew to her mouth as tears welled in her eyes. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "It was you?" Marcus nodded, his eyes just as misty. "It was us. And we came back, because we made a promise." For a long moment, Maria stood frozen, her eyes locked on the two grown strangers who had just stepped out of a helicopter and called her by name. Her mind was racing, trying to match the memory of two rain-soaked children with the poised, successful adults standing before her. And then Marcus spoke, his voice calm, steady, and filled with emotion. "You saved us that day," he said softly. "We were running with our mother, trying to escape a home filled with fear. Our father, he was dangerous. Violent. That night, she grabbed us and ran with nothing but the clothes on our backs. We didn't know where we were going. We just kept moving." Maria's chest tightened as she listened, the weight of their words sinking in. "We were starving," Marcus continued. "Cold. Scared. That diner, your kindness, that meal. It gave us something we hadn't felt in a long time, safety. It gave us the strength to keep going. To survive another night." Maria felt her throat close. The memory of their small voices and shivering bodies came rushing back, more vivid than ever. She had no idea back then how much pain they had endured. All she had seen were hungry kids who needed help. Now she was seeing who they had become. Lena stepped forward, her eyes glistening with tears. "We never forgot you," she said. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "You didn't know our names. You didn't ask for anything in return. But what you gave us, it stayed with us. It became a turning point in our lives." Maria shook her head, still stunned. "All I gave you were pancakes." Lena smiled through her tears. "You gave us hope, Ms. Maria. That was everything." They stood there in silence for a moment. The neighborhood still buzzed with curiosity from a distance, but Maria heard none of it. Her world had narrowed to these two faces, once children, now adults, standing in front of her as living proof that kindness could echo for a lifetime. Marcus cleared his throat, composing himself. "After that night, things slowly got better. A kind woman helped our mom find shelter. We moved to a new city. We worked hard, stayed focused." He gestured to himself. "I joined the Air Force. I wanted to protect people the way no one had protected us. I've flown rescue missions. I've received medals. But nothing felt like this moment right here." Then he turned slightly toward Lena. "She built a tech company in California. She employs hundreds of people now. She's one of the top names in her field." Lena added, "And even with all that, our biggest mission was finding you. It took years of searching, old diner records, social media, phone calls. But we never gave up." Marcus smiled warmly. "We knew we had to thank you, properly. And today, we finally get to." Maria didn't say a word. She couldn't. Her eyes were full. Her heart, full. What had been a simple act of kindness had come back to her, not as a memory, but as a miracle. Maria's hands trembled as she led Marcus and Lena into her humble home, a small, two-bedroom house with creaky floors and faded furniture. It wasn't much, but it was hers. As they stepped inside, she couldn't believe what was happening. Two strangers had just stepped out of a helicopter, and now, she realized, they weren't strangers at all. They were the children she had fed nearly 2 decades ago. She poured them coffee with shaking hands, still trying to steady her breath. They sat in her living room, the same place she had spent so many lonely evenings watching reruns on a flickering old TV. But this night was different. Her heart was full, and her home, though modest, felt warmer than ever. For hours, they talked. About the night that changed their lives. About their mother, who had eventually found safety and rebuilt her life. About the struggles they had faced growing up, and the determination that kept them going. Lena spoke of college, of late nights coding in libraries, of building her tech company from the ground up with just a laptop and an idea. Marcus shared stories of his time in the Air Force, flying into danger zones, saving lives, always remembering the woman who once saved his. Maria sat silently for much of it, smiling through tears. She couldn't believe how far they had come, how a single meal had rippled through time, shaping 2 entire lives. Then Marcus reached into a leather folder resting on the coffee table. "Before we go," he said, his voice soft, "we want to give you something." He handed it to her. Maria opened it with trembling fingers, and froze. Inside was a set of keys, resting neatly on a page with a photo of a beautiful, modern house. The location, a peaceful neighborhood not far from where she had lived all her life. Marcus leaned forward. "It's yours. Fully paid. No mortgage. No strings." Maria blinked in disbelief. Lena added, "We've also set up a retirement fund for you. It's enough that you'll never need to work again, unless you want to. You've taken care of others your whole life. Now it's your turn to be taken care of." Maria covered her mouth, the tears falling freely now. She looked down at the keys, then back at the two adults who had once been cold, hungry children in a rainy doorway. "I just gave you pancakes," she whispered. Marcus smiled, tears in his own eyes now. "To you, it was breakfast. To us, it was hope. It was the first time in a long time that we felt seen, safe, and loved. It was everything." Word of their reunion spread quickly. Local news picked up the story. Then national outlets. Social media exploded with praise. People called Maria a hero, but she didn't feel like one. "I just did what anyone should do," she told a reporter. "I helped two kids who needed food." But to Marcus and Lena, and now the world, Maria Thompson had become a symbol of something much greater. That one simple act of kindness can echo for a lifetime, and sometimes, come back to you in the most unexpected and beautiful way. Sometimes, one small act of kindness can change a life forever. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss another powerful story. Thanks for watching, and remember, kindness always comes back.